Welcome back to another chest-bursting and Yachua-thirsting episode of What Happened, the YouTube-style pop culture media show where no matter who wins, we lose. Now, as many of you should know, the Alien and Predator franchises are not strangers to this show, as we've covered both deadly species in the past, along with several video games, and we most likely will be covering them again in the future. For now, though, I think it's about time for us to finally get their first cinematic clash within our sights, as it took more than 10 years of development, cancelled much better unmade films in the process, and led to one of the most dreadful sequels in film history. So grab your fishnets and polish up your plasma casters as I answer the question, what happened to Alien vs. Predator? Before we all start scurrying through dank, constantly shifting hallways, why don't we first take a tour through the blood-soaked world of Hyperstrange and Smooth Brain Dev's new brutal FPS, Incision, which just released over on Steam. In this fast-paced white-knuckle send-up to legendary shooters of the 90s like Quake and Blood, you're tasked with slaughtering your way through an endless army of rusty biomechanical nightmares in an effort to stop the growth, an encroaching eldritch entity that's looking to swallow up reality itself. To do this, you're going to need the most powerful weapons you can get your hands on, and Incision delivers with such beauties as a trusty revolver, a 4-barreled shotgun, and a flesh-shredding saw spear, amongst several others, and they all come equipped with even more deadly secondary firing modes. And you're going to need them for Incision's old-school challenge, as there's no mid-level checkpoints or quick saves, as collectible lives are your only true safety net to survive all 15 harrowing levels, letting you know that it's going to truly be a brutal test of your mettle. So if you'd like to check out Incision over on Steam, hit the link in the description or pinned comment below. Thanks again to Hyperstrange for sponsoring today's video, and now, without further ado, let's throw ourselves into the middle of extraterrestrial extermination. In 1989, Dark Horse Comics was given permission to combine the licenses from both film franchises into one, which wasn't too much of a stretch, as they already started publishing both Predator and Alien comics in their own separate series. The medium allowed Dark Horse to think up fantastical storylines that would be nigh unfilmable in the late 80s, as they took place entirely on distant alien worlds, featured numerous creatures, and revolved heavily around a human character that would get adopted into a Predator clan by the name of Machiko no Guchi. As a bit of a nod to these comics, Predator 2 film director Stephen Hopkins wanted to include a xenomorph skull on the trophy wall featured in the final act, which really got the conversation started, with fans speculating not if the two titanic terrors of the stars would finally square off, but when. This excitement spurred writer Peter Briggs to submit a spec script to 20th Century Fox, which is when a writer unsolicited by a movie company pitches their work in hopes of it being picked up, rather than said company commissioning someone for a script with the intent to film already in place. Briggs based his work heavily on the original Dark Horse AVP comics, and while Fox did not use this script directly, it did convince them to start seriously looking at the possibilities of developing the idea further. Now, I've seen some reports that Capcom's 1994 AVP arcade game was somewhat based on Briggs' script, but I couldn't really find any definitive confirmation on that, from Capcom's side anyway. Regardless, when most of these events were taking place in 1990 to 1991, well, that just so happened to coincide with another event, which was the disastrous creative differences that were raging on the set of Alien 3. Now, despite those creative differences, which you can learn about here, Alien 3 was successful enough at the box office that the producers of the Alien franchise were not ruling out a fourth movie. So while the Xenomorphs were obviously staying busy for most of the 90s, the Predator was staying in the shadows, biding his time. Now, when that fourth go-around, Alien Resurrection, was released and the response to it really wasn't what Fox was looking for, they decided that, yeah, maybe it was time to give the franchise a little rest, which would be the perfect opportunity for the Predator to enter the fray. However, it should be noted that between both sci-fi horror series, there were 6 producers between them, and they would all have a say in the story and how each character would be depicted, which of course would take additional time to sift through. So, during this cooling off period, Fox allowed the versus concept to evolve somewhere outside of movies, which was most notably in video games, and even more notably with the 2 PC first-person shooters from Monolith and Rebellion. Something that Night Dive should absolutely remaster now, Mr. Kick! It's about here where things get tragic, or more tragic I should say, and the movie hasn't even started filming yet. Around this same time, in the early 2000s, James Cameron was formulating his own idea for another standalone Alien movie and had begun writing it, and had even spoken to Ridley Scott about possibly directing it as well. But as evidence that the world is not fair and a horrible place, once Fox producers and senior management made it clear they were more interested in fast-tracking AVP, Cameron ceased all work on his project, saying to Ain't It Cool News in 2007, "You do that, you're going to kill the validity of the franchise in my mind. Because to me, that was Frankenstein meets the werewolf. It was Universal just taking their assets and starting to play them off against each other." And so 20th Century Fox moved on from amateurish, second-rate creators like James Cameron and Ridley Scott, and shacked up with the true visionary of the movie world, Paul W.S. Resident Evil / Monster Hunter movie Anderson. It is now the futuristic year of 2002, and despite having a script already prepared by Peter Briggs, which was over a decade old, Kevin Fox and James DeMonaco, co-writers of The Negotiator, were commissioned to draft up a new script. But they again heavily based it on the Dark Horse comics, most likely because they were awesome. As you might expect, the script was rejected by one of the many producers, and specifically in this case, longtime Predator helmer John Davis. He felt the story needed to take place on Earth, which, while obviously keeping the budget down and tying it more closely to the style of Predator, presented many other problems. Now, when word got around that Fox were looking for another script that would hopefully please everyone, Paul W.S. Anderson was able to schedule a meeting with them to make his own pitch. To his credit, he had been a longtime fan of both series, and using various influences like Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, along with a sprinkling of comic book flourishes, Anderson combined both franchises in a way that did please the producers. Part of the reason his story was approved is that it adhered to John Davis's wishes and took place on Earth, but that of course presented a problem, because nobody on Earth should even know that xenomorphs exist. To get around that little conundrum, instead of a crowded city or government lab, it was decided an underground pyramid miles beneath the frosty crust of Antarctica would be one of the few locations that could keep the acid-spitting Xenos a secret. Anderson's script was then given a studio-mandated final pass by one Shane Salerno, the writer of Armageddon. And with that, they were off to the stars, although not really. This is because the casting process proved tricky as well, with one pivotal moment in Anderson's pitch being stuck in limbo for a few months while they waited for a specific linchpin to fall into place. Dutch Schaefer, as played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, was originally written to step out of a Predator ship in a brief but important ending stinger, but only if the Austrian oak would actually be available to film it. In 2003, he was up for re-election as the governor of California, and if he won, he would naturally be too busy to take on another film, or possibly even a sequel if things got to that point. So when he did win his re-election later that year, the cameo was scrapped, and with it, a tantalizing possibility of a Dutch-led chapter. Now, the second role of AVP that proved problematic to cast was the main protagonist. Alexa Woods, who is loosely based on Machiko from the AVP comics, had dozens upon dozens of actresses read for her, but there was no clear winner. This decision process ultimately lasted so long that just 1 week before actual filming began, Sana Lathan was told she had finally gotten the part, which obviously didn't leave a lot of room to prepare for the actual shoot. And by the way, get ready to hear that a few more times. Now, as for why old Paulie Anderson didn't just cast Mila Jovovich in the role, well, that's only because she was busy filming Resident Evil Apocalypse at the time, but you know he woulda if he coulda. As is often the case for many What Happened episodes of the past, the production didn't receive nearly the amount of money you'd expect to film what was intended to be a big sci-fi blockbuster, as the budget was reportedly around the $60 million range. Now, just to put that in perspective, Alien Resurrection, which was released in 1997, was given a higher budget at around $70 million, so despite Fox being all gung-ho about this new age Frankenstein meets the werewolf, they sure wanted to keep the purse strings tight. Now, due to this and various other logistical reasons, filming in Antarctica was not really viable, so sets need to be made for the whaling station seen early in the final film. And if you've seen it, you'll remember it wasn't the most authentic looking Arctic environment. Most of the budget went towards the pyramid sets and creature work, as Paul W.S. Anderson had to save money with mostly character actors or ones he worked with before, as Lance Henriksen was the only star most fans of the franchises would recognize. Now, while tons of great movies have been made for far less, both the original Predator and 1986's Aliens came in at under $20 million, what both films were able to benefit from was more than enough time. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, this was something Fox didn't want to give AVP. Reportedly, and I still can't believe this, Alien vs. Predator was filmed in just 2.5 months, which is more than enough time for, say, a drama or a comedy, but for something of this complexity with plenty of action and set pieces, it was truly a pittance.
Oh yeah, I got this. What a pittance.
I know what you're going to say next. Well, this is a very effects-heavy movie, so most of the time probably went towards post-production, right? Right? No! In fact, if you ever felt that some of the CGI shots in AVP looked maybe below the expected level of quality, well, there's a good reason for that. Fox wanted the movie out in theaters before the end of the 2004 summer movie season. So, in another baffling decision, they allotted only 4 months for post-production. So, all the editing, the score, the special effects, in only slightly less than double the time that the actual production got. This can obviously lead to a film feeling rushed and a bit underbaked, especially an effects-heavy one, and yeah, that's why AVP feels rushed and underbaked. Fortunately, though, its release date, in terms of the competition, was a good one, with Princess Diaries 2 and Without a Paddle being the only other wide releases in AVP's orbit. So it handily slashed its way to $39 million in North America on its opening weekend, and went on to carve up $177 million during its worldwide theatrical run. That's a pretty good return, of course, but critically, AVP was strung up and skinned by both publications and fans alike, both camps of them. While the action, production design, and suit effects, for the aliens at least, were praised, the acting, lack of character development for pretty much the entire cast, and the ignoring of specific franchise rules, like alien incubation periods, were largely derided. The biggest fumble, of course, was the fact that AVP was rated PG-13, which was certainly a choice for the mashing of two exclusively R-rated extraterrestrial terrors. Why, you ask? Well, for money, of course. Fox was aiming AVP squarely at the teen audience, hence the before school started release date. Because back then, the thought process was that R-rated movies simply couldn't pull in the same numbers as PG-13. So, any instances of violence against humans was basically not on the table, as Paul Anderson was ordered to shoot for PG-13, and he did as instructed. Despite the very tame unrated DVD that would eventually follow, there is no real director's cut that features buckets of human gore, but with the green blood of both species, Predator on alien violence was at least fair game. So with all of that said, it's no surprise you saw review bylines like Horror.com proclaiming it as a pretty movie to look at with its grandiose sets and top-notch creature effects, but it's a lot like Anderson's previous works in that it's all facade and no foundation. But really, nothing encapsulates the film better than a summary from the Dallas Morning News, which boiled down to a transparent attempt to jumpstart two run-down franchises. Ignoring the critics, of course, Fox patted themselves on the back for another job well done, and almost immediately greenlit a sequel, the woeful and incredibly hard to watch Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And no, not hard to watch because of its subject matter, nothing like that, because it's literally hard to watch. With even more cardboardy characters straight out of a teen slasher movie, which was ironic considering Requiem was pretty much a teen slasher movie, it has the distinction of being the worst reviewed anything in the history of either franchise. Now, in somewhat of a twist ending, one of the film's earliest and harshest critics, James Cameron, who had been dismissive of the very premise back in the early 2000s, actually praised AVP later on, admitting to Ain't It Cool News, "I saw Alien vs. Predator and it was actually pretty good. I think of the 5 Alien films, I'd rate it third. I actually liked it. I actually liked it a lot," which is something I don't think anyone could have ever predicted. What was a bit more predictable, though, was how Ridley Scott felt. When asked by Empire magazine in 2012 if he had watched either AVP film, he said, laughing merrily, "No, I couldn't do that. I can't quite take that step." And there you have it. While mildly profitable, both AVP films damaged the reputations of both franchises for several years, and while the attempts to resurrect them have been wobbly here and there, recent successes like Alien Romulus, Earth, and Prey, as well as the upcoming Predator Badlands, prove there's life in them yet. And if things continue where they're going, the idea of two ferocious star beasts clashing once again doesn't seem like it's completely lost to the stars just yet. And if you know of any other sci-fi spectacles that were led to the slaughter, let me know in the comments below or enter the cosmic concrete jungle that is my social media. See you next time, and thanks for watching!